Immigrants are a drain on America. They feed off the welfare state. They take more than they contribute. And our government's policies encourage that.
They're encouraging illegal immigrants to apply for food stamps.
The illegal aliens sneak in here, they got their kids, and they're on a welfare program.
Some are. But then I also read headlines like this. Immigrants are makers, not takers. Immigration benefits the United States. So what's the truth? Are immigrants makers, or are most a bunch of welfare collecting takers? There are detailed studies that come to opposite conclusions. So let's look at two of them. Alex Nowrasteh of the CATO Institute did research that concluded poor immigrants use far less welfare than poor Americans do. But a study by Stephen Camarada of the Center for Immigration Studies found the opposite. So who's lying here?
Well, let me say this. The question of whether immigrants use less than Americans of the same education, there it doesn't look so bad. High school dropout Americans do use a lot of welfare, and so do high school dropout immigrants. But it's not that much. It's worse than the natives, but not that much. That's not where the big difference is. It's that immigrants are so much more likely to be high school dropouts in the first place. But the thing you have to understand is about welfare in America, work and welfare often go together like love and marriage. You can work. Yes, you can work.
I think they fight each other.
No, here's why. The way our welfare system has been redesigned over the last 20 years, it's to help low-income workers with children. So you can work full-time, but your kids can get free school lunch. You can work and be on Medicaid. You can work and get WIC. You can work and get food stamps. You can work and live in public housing.
The welfare state has also been redesigned over time to limit non-citizen access to the program. That was the most successful part of the 1996 reform, was to build a wall around the welfare state to prevent non-citizens and poor immigrants from getting these programs in the first place.
If you're illegal, you're not eligible.
You're not eligible for those programs at all. You can be here for 5 years on a green card. You can't get these programs either. If you're here on a guest worker visa, you're not eligible for these programs going forward.
Except you get free public schooling and free hospitalization if you're sick, so that's a form of welfare.
It is, but in order to count the net fiscal cost of that, you also have to count the taxes that student will pay going forward. Steve talked a lot about households. That means that he's counting kids in these households who are American citizens born here up until the age of 18, but then he stops counting them, and he's not counting any of the taxes they then pay for the rest of their life.
But the Heritage Foundation takes his side. The net drain, all taxes paid minus services used, is $14,000 for illegal-headed households, $4,000, negative $4,000 for legal immigrants.
Well, the Heritage study makes the same mistake that a lot of these other studies do, which is they do not count the tax benefits over time of these kids. One of the best ways that immigrants help the fiscal state of the U.S. government is by having kids who then work for years and pay into these programs going forward. And that also doesn't count the contributions of Social Security and Medicare. Immigrants are on average younger than Americans. They're more likely to work.
They're paying into it.
They're paying into it, and a lot of them return back to their home countries before getting these benefits. So it's a huge
So they pay into it but don't collect.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you about the long term. The National Academy of Science did a really interesting long-term study, and basically they said immigrants are net drain on average, this was back in the 90s, for the first 22 years.
But a big gain later.
But it took 18 years to pay back the drain that they created in the first 22. After 40 years, they start to be a net positive for Americans in terms of taxes, and that assumes that today's immigrants and their children are going to do as well as past generations, and the evidence does not. No, the evidence suggests that they're not. Many immigrants clearly do better over the generations, but they are not closing the gap with natives anywhere near as fast as past generations.
But what's interesting is these are the same arguments we've been hearing forever about immigrants. They're not going to assimilate. This system is different. These people this time are different. And what we don't see is that immigrants start a lot of businesses. They contribute to the economy in the long run.
Last point, legal immigration. Do you agree at least that when people have skills, we should be quicker to let people in?
You'd want to select more skilled immigrants, but you'd want to make sure we actually have a need. Real wages for STEM workers, science, technology, engineering, math, show 14 years.
So government's going to decide what the needs are?
No, I think the American people decide through their elected representatives. That's how it works.
That's government.
That's government.
That's not how it works if you let You say let the market
The
do it.
market
I'm
should
with you
decide-
on this one.
And he has to push it down.
The market should decide what the U.S. economy values in terms of wages and what people should come here. It's the market that drove me to move from California to Virginia. It's the market that should drive immigrants to move here from China.
The
or India or
department, our
elsewhere.
Department of Labor says we know where the jobs are. We make predictions. We can pick what we'll need.
And this administration also said it knew that Solyndra was going to be the future of solar energy technology. The Department of Labor makes predictions every 10 years about what jobs will be created in the United States and what industries and where they will be, and they are off by multitudes, by millions each and every decade. So the idea that they're going to design a labor policy that will select immigrants from abroad is absurd.
Nobody wants the Department of Labor to do it. We want the American people to be able to choose as part of our country.
Through the Department of Labor. That's
They
how
don't.
it
They
is.
pass legislation.
Who will decide we want this many people from Uruguay?
Because that's how you make a decision as a sovereign state. America's not
Should
just
we
a
have
market.
a national steel
No, it's
policy?
not.
Should
That's
we
how
have a
government
national
makes
oil
decisions.
market?
No, that's
Most
how
decisions-
people, that's how a sovereign people make a decision. What is the absorption capacity of our schools? Your position is business should be able to push as many kids in our schools, even if they can't take it.
And individuals should choose which ones they want to go to, and if they want to open a school, it shouldn't be politicians.
But the point is, the funding for schools is still going to come from the taxpayers, unless you think the taxpayers have nothing to do with funding for schools.
All of his
But that's
points
not the
can be-
America we live in. The bottom line is this: you have to have an immigration policy that sets limits. The only way not to is to push it down the throat of the American people. The public has shown overwhelmingly they want limits. They're concerned. They like
market
immigration, but they
sets
also
limits.
have concerns about integration and the absorption capacity of schools and all kinds of sensible things. And if you embrace his policy, you have to shove it down the throats of the American people and in some sort of
You're
undemocratic
against
way.
shoving down the throats on this TV program. Thank you, Stephen and Alex. Now, this